A fierce critic of Governor Gavin Newsom, former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer is running for governor. Mayor Faulconer joins us today to make his case as to why Newsom deserves to be recalled and what his credentials are to replace him. Mayor Faulconer, on what basis do you think that you or any other Republican have a prayer of being elected governor in such an overwhelmingly Democratic state based on John Cox's 2018 performance of only gaining 38% of the vote to Newsom's 62%?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me on the program. And, was able to overcome registration odds several times before as mayor of San Diego. A proud Republican in a majority Democrat city. But I'm a big believer that you win by addition, and you win by bringing everyone together, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And in this case, statewide, for folks that want to change and that want to change now. And I will tell you, Scott, there's a real sense of urgency in California. That's why you're seeing the signatures at the number that they are, over 2 million being submitted. And this is all across the political spectrum and all across every geographic part of California. Families who want their kids back in school and are angry and frustrated. Small business owners that have been opened and closed multiple times during the pandemic and the changing rules and regulations. The fact that businesses have no certainty in terms of our business climate. There's so many reasons why this recall has not only gained steam, but will absolutely qualify, in my opinion, and people want to change at the top.
Well, yeah, that is the claim. But what is your business case for removing Governor Newsom from office?
Well, it's about leadership, and it's about action, and particularly on those issues that I think Californians care deeply about, and they're not seeing the results in terms of what should be happening in our state. The governor has botched the basics. It's time to have somebody who can actually get results, work with Democrats and Republicans, and that's what I was known as mayor for 2 terms in San Diego, somebody who rolled up his sleeves and actually made a real difference. I'll give you just a couple of highlights.
Because you say that he botched the basics, but yeah, go a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah, no, happy to. And, look, one of the biggest issues that is facing California, and certainly one of the biggest issues before COVID, is the issue of homelessness. We took dramatic action when I was mayor of San Diego. We were the only city of any size that actually reduced homelessness 2 years by double digits. We took significant efforts from shelters to get folks off the street, to enforce quality of life, and to help get the people that help and the support that they need. But that is in contrast to what we're seeing in virtually every other part of our state, where the unfortunate reality is that homelessness is exploding by double digits in most of our cities in California. And that's not an issue of partisanship. That's an issue of leadership. And it starts at the top, and we need to have a governor that's going to take the same dramatic approach that we took in San Diego to get folks off the street. And I think that's one example. And one more I would raise is because I think it's incredibly important. You talk about making the business case. The unfortunate reality is that we are seeing an exodus of great California companies to other states across our nation. And you name the state, whether it's Texas, Nevada, Florida, because of our business climate. It's time to have a governor that says, we will support good California companies. We will give that certainty of environment and regulation to allow good quality jobs to not only start in California, but to grow.
You talk about longstanding issues like homelessness and what is perceived as the exodus of companies and high wealth individuals from California. But on the proximate causes that are talked about, Governor Newsom has faced wildfires, a once in 100-year pandemic, an economy in free fall, and balky stop-start leadership at the federal level during the first year of the pandemic. How would you have done any different in the face of those challenges?
Well, I'll give you a few concrete examples. And again, going back to our business climate. And when the governor came out just a few months ago and supported the largest tax increase in California that would have affected every small business in terms of commercial property taxes. in the midst of a pandemic, for our governor to say, I want to raise taxes on small businesses, to me was unconscionable. And the fact that Californians across the spectrum said no to Prop 15, I think gives you a good indication of how fed up folks are with the only solution coming out of Sacramento is send us more money. I think you also would have seen myself when you talk about AB 5, to have a governor that would have said, you know what, we're going to support the ability of Californians to be independent contractors. We're going to support our rideshare ability to do that in California. And yet that didn't happen. And I think those are two important examples of what, when we talk about business climate, and that says we're going to welcome and create good California jobs and not put up barriers that prevent that from happening.
What would be the priorities of a Faulconer administration, assuming that you assume the office?
Well, there would be many. First and foremost, it would be to bring leadership and transparency and accountability front and center. I know a lot about that. 2 terms as mayor, and like if you don't get results, you're not going to be mayor for very long. And that was the focus of what I was doing and the approach that I took. I can tell you by the time this recall happens, and I think it's likely to happen later this year in either November or December is the current best guess. But if our schools, our public schools truly aren't open by then, that would be a huge priority of mine, because our kids deserve to be in the classroom full time. The fact that private schools have been open in California, where teachers safely teaching and kids safely learning in the classroom, I think speaks volumes about what should have been happened in our public schools. But it's about leadership, it's about equity, and that's not what's happening right now.
Among your history is you've supported plans to create paths for citizenship for undocumented, plans to reduce greenhouse gases, and you talked about increasing funding to combat homelessness. You even campaigned against Prop 8 in 2014. Your positions sound more like a Democrat. Why are you a Republican?
Well, it's a big party with a lot of room for different ideas.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of room today.
Well, I think there is. And look, and I think that as I've been very outspoken, as you rightfully point out, on the issues that I think that matter to us as Californians and matters to us as Republicans. And I've never felt like our California Republican Party should be a carbon copy of the National Party. I feel very strongly about that. You talk about the environment, it's part of our DNA as Californians, clean water, clean air, and we did a lot of work on that as mayor and what we did in San Diego. So I think what Californians want right now, they're less concerned, Scott, if you have an R or a D next to your name, but what they're looking for is the leadership that will actually get results on the issues that folks care about, not just talk about them, not just virtue signal, but to actually make a difference. And I think that's one of the things that I was most known for as mayor.
How do you respond, though, to other Republicans who have violated Ronald Reagan's old 11th commandment of thou shalt not speak negatively of another Republican, like John Cox, who ran in the last election against Gavin Newsom, who essentially say that you're a rhino, a Republican in name only, and trying to be all things to all people?
Well, look, you're going to get a lot of accusations from folks that are running races and aren't doing it very well. Look, I think the fact of the matter is one of the reasons why we're gaining so much support in this campaign is because of not just my experience, but because of the ideas and the policies that we're talking about in terms of bringing those statewide. And I've taken the approach from the very beginning. You win by addition. It's not about just winning Republicans. It's about Republicans, Democrats, independents. That's what you should be doing. That's how I did it in San Diego. Not only to run and win a campaign, but to effectively govern. And that's the exact same approach that I'm going to take as governor of California.
And so your case against John Cox, and it appears former Congressman Dougose, who has recently said that he's jumping into the race, is what? If we want an alternative approach to Gavin Newsom, what's your brief that puts you ahead and above Cox and Ossie?
Yeah, I think again, I think it's the experience and really getting results on the issues that the Californians care about, and being tested and gone through the trials that you do as mayor in the second largest city in this state. And we talked about the issue of homelessness. The issue of public safety is one that I feel particularly strongly about. Having safe neighborhoods, it begins and ends with that. Whether you're a mayor or a governor. I did not defund the police as mayor this past year in San Diego. I increased the budget by 7%. Why? Because I knew it was important that if we want the best and brightest men and women in our police department, we better give them the training and the tools necessary to be successful. And guess what? When it comes to public safety, again, that's not a partisanship issue. That's a common sense issue. And so I think when you approach problems like that, as I did as mayor, and you tackle them head on, that's how you're successful in statewide California.
Well, you talk about public safety and increasing funding for police. After the death of George Floyd, there's been a major national conversation on policing, and particularly its treatment of people of color, and in particular African Americans. How do you respond to Black Lives Matter and other activist organizations that talk about sending more police in is not the solution to increasing public safety or public trust with regards to the issue of public safety?
Look, I think you always have to be willing to reform any organization, and particularly your police department. I mean, I remember back, Scott, when I was first elected mayor of San Diego. The unfortunate reality is we had a few officers that were doing the wrong thing. I brought in new leadership on day one when I was mayor. I hired the first female police chief in the history of San Diego. We also became one of the largest cities in the country to first adopt body-worn cameras. Incredibly important to protecting the community and the officers who are serving that community. And now they're pretty ubiquitous, obviously, across places across California. When I was mayor, we also put forward a de-escalation policy and a duty to intervene policy. And so you always have to be looking at reforms and changes, because I strongly believe that what are best practices today won't be best practices 5 years from now. So you better have the attitude that says we always have to look to improve, and particularly in your police department, because you have to have the trust of the public that you're serving.
So I want to go back to your comment about there being a big tent party for Republicans. In 2016, you said you would not vote for Donald Trump. The quote was, "I could never vote for Donald Trump." But after he was elected, you ended up in 2020 saying that he was the clear choice over Joe Biden for getting our economic situation back on track. How do you square your opposition to President Trump in 2016 to your support in 2020?
Yeah, I did, and made that decision primarily on the economy and the absolute importance to get us through this pandemic, and to, as I said, keep our businesses moving in the right direction. And I think that was incredibly important. I think there was a clear choice and a clear difference. And look, I do believe that you can have different views and different opinions on whether it's the president or your political party. But I think at the end of the day, again, what I think Californians are really looking for right now is a governor that's going to stand up for the principles and values of common sense, getting results, and moving this state in the right direction. And as I said, I think they don't really care so much about whether you're Republican or a Democrat, is can you get the job done?
Do you think that former President Trump stood up for those values, especially with regards to his management of the pandemic?
Well, look, I think we're all in this together. And I think it's incredibly important that we continue to be all in this together. And again, I think when it comes to, this governor's race, there's going to be a lot of folks that want to talk about, make it all about the former president. But I'm really going to be talking about what I think Californians need right now, what they haven't been getting under this administration. And I think, again, that's why you're seeing the recall have such strong momentum, not from just Republicans, but from Democrats and independents and families all throughout California who want to change, and who want to change now.
Well, you say about the strength of the recall, but there are many who observe that the judge who approved the extension of the period related to gathering signatures, if he had not done that, in no way would the recall have gotten enough signatures to pass under normal time requirements. So is it really true that the recall has a lot of steam to it, given the fact that essentially it was given kind of a hall pass in terms of its timing requirements?
Yeah, I think it does have a lot of steam to it. And I think if you look at particularly the last several months where they're collecting 100,000 signatures a week, and I think for all of the right reasons that we've talked about, again, that rising anger and frustration that our public schools still aren't open. The frustration from so many California small businesses and owners and restaurateurs that were open and shut. And again, with no science behind it, no science behind outdoor dining being shut down because it wasn't contributing to the spread of COVID-19. And so when you look at all of that and the hypocrisy, I think that's why you've seen this momentum really, gather that steam that you talk about, particularly in the last several months.
You're quoted as describing government as dominated by Democrats in Sacramento who are disconnected from the struggles of workday Californians. After a few early successes, California's last Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, watched those same Democrats essentially frustrate his agenda. And it is more Democratic in Sacramento today in the state legislature than it was even back then. How are you going to succeed where Arnold effectively was shut down after his ballot initiatives were killed?
You have to be able to.
You would have a successful administration.
Great question. And look, you have to be able to work on the other side of the aisle. When I was mayor of San Diego for 2 terms, I had to work with a majority Democrat city council my entire tenure. And so all of the budgets that I had to get across and through had to work with the council members on our priorities. All of the things that we did in infrastructure, paving half the streets, the work we did on homelessness, the work we did on public safety and housing, all involved working across the aisle. And I think that's what Californians want. They actually want effective government. I mean, in an elected position, or as I said, an executive position, you can demagogue issues or virtue signal all day, but if you're not actually going to get anything done, what's the point? And I've been very outspoken, Scott, about one-party rule that's happening right now in Sacramento. It's a one-party rule for a decade. I think it's time for a competition of ideas. I think people want that. I think people want a different approach. And yes, somebody who can work with all sides of the aisle, because that's how you get things done. And if there's any thread of our conversation today, it's one I hope that folks will take away, that it's time for a little more common sense. And it's time for actually working on the issues that Californians care about.
Well, let's talk about one of those issues. Back in 2019, you said that housing was the #1 crisis facing your city. Many would agree that it's also true of California. If you were governor, what 3 decisive measures would you take to address the housing availability and affordability crisis that's facing our state right now?
Well, I'll tell you, and I agree that it's absolutely one of the biggest issues that we face. And the solution to the housing crisis, Scott, is to build more housing. And that's how you get to the issues of affordability. And that's how you get to the issues of actually providing the opportunity for our kids want to be able to stay and afford to stay in California.
How do you do that?
Have that place of their own.
How do you do
by
that?
Tackling the policies that are the barriers to entry. I'll give you some examples of what I did as mayor. We passed in my final year as mayor a program that I was very proud about called Complete Communities, where we increased our ability on density, particularly around our transportation corridors. Gave people the right to get permits over the counter by actually really reducing the time that it takes to go through all of that process. We did things like eliminating parking requirements for the construction of new apartments and condominiums, again, to reduce the cost of housing and let the market help decide that. You have to be creative. You can't just have policies. That's just the way we've always done them for the last 20 or 30 years. You have to be able to have policies that the market can respond to and actually build the units that Californians can afford.
What about things like, what other types of things, though, on a state level would you deal with on housing related to things like the affordability? The cost of a piece of lumber today is the same here as it is in China. The cost of all of the fees related to how it is that local governments stack money on top of money for financing housing. What is it that you do about that?
No, you know it well. And there's many factors that all contribute to the astronomical price to actually produce housing in California. One of the biggest barriers, and I've been very outspoken about it, is CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and the need to reform that to allow us to actually construct housing quicker. It takes too long to do that in California. It just does. And so there are so many other built-in, processes to do that. Time is money. And we have to have the ability. Why I spent so much effort in San Diego as mayor on updating our community plans, because I would say, where do we want that growth and development to occur? And just importantly, where should it not occur? And let's agree with that. But then let's make it easier to go on in where we want that and to actually be able to construct the unit. So that type of reform on entitlement and processing, I believe, is absolutely essential for us to be able to encourage the construction of more housing units where we want it, along those major transportation corridors, to give us that density to help with affordability.
Okay, you can build more units and you can hopefully maybe reduce some of the costs related to housing. On the other hand, the other side of it is you can raise incomes. Now, in the past, you voted against increasing minimum wages in your city. But overall, what's your plan for addressing the growing income inequality issue that's put so many California families at risk?
Yeah, it's about opportunity. Great question. And it's about, again, having policies that, for example, don't say that we're going to tax particularly our small businesses and our entrepreneurs who can afford it the least, who are struggling to actually try to make it and grow that business. We have to have a state government that says, we want to support our small businesses, give people the opportunity to grow and hire Californians so they can enter the job market, make those wages, move up the ladder. And it really starts from the top, and to provide that opportunity. But if we have a state government whose only solution seems to be year after year, it says, what taxes are we going to raise on Californians to send more money to Sacramento? That's why you're seeing it so incredibly hard to make a living in our state. That's why you're seeing so many folks saying, I'm going to move to another state where it's more affordable. That's unsustainable. And that's just the reality. And that's why we need to tackle that head on.
So you believe that there are no tax increases that are worthy of consideration in order to address things like improving education, which then drives opportunity and productivity to take those high wage jobs, our transportation infrastructure. It's a commonly accepted fact that we are falling behind. So there is no place where California needs to essentially create a higher level of taxation to address those long-term and, for many people, intractable issues?
Look, the answer is, it's not about raising taxes right now in California. That's not what we need. I very clearly not what we need, but we need those investments. I did it in San Diego. I mean, I paved half of the roads in San Diego. I made infrastructure investment one of our key priorities. And we did it by revenue growth, a strong economy that gives you the tax revenue that you need. That not only we paved half of our streets, we kept our libraries and rec centers open to the highest level in a decade, invested in our police department, and not go down what we're seeing in terms of Sacramento right now, a boondoggle with high-speed rail for billions of dollars that Californians aren't getting any return on, and also be more efficient with the dollars you have. And I think one of the reasons that you're seeing, again, this anger so much right now in California, and again, rightfully so, we lost $30 billion in fraud, $30 billion this year alone from our economic development department. And yet at the same time, Scott, we have 500,000 Californians who can't get their unemployment benefits right now. So it's about being smart with the dollars. It's about being efficient with those dollars. And it's about keeping the tax dollars in the pockets of Californians so they can grow and invest. That's going to be my philosophy.
And I think you were referring to the Employment Development Department, correct? Related?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure we were clear on that. And you speak to something like high-speed rail, which I infer that you're not supportive of. But for many, they say greater connectivity in the state and high-speed rail is indicative of the type of project that California needs in order to bring it into parity with China, with the European Union and others. How do you address issues like heavy transportation and moving goods and people across the state?
Yeah,
and we only have a few moments, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Look, high-speed rail is a boondoggle. It is. We should be investing in our transportation network and our roads and our freeways to help move goods and services and not spend billions of dollars on something that voters were promising are not going to get. It's not going to connect Los Angeles and San Francisco. It's going to, if it ever is completed, it's going to be a small portion in the Central Valley. That's pulling it, it's not what voters voted for. You have to be upfront. You have to say, here's what our needs are. Here's how we're going to pay for them and not get sidetracked on things like high-speed rail.
All right, and we'll leave it there. Thank you, Mayor Faulconer.
Scott, pleasure to join you. Thank you very much.
And that's our show. Thanks to our guests and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syphax. See you next time right here on KVIE. All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.